What would you do if you found yourself face to face with a wounded lion? Run? Hide? For one brave park ranger in Kenya's MAASAI Mara, the answer was neither. Instead, he chose compassion, and what happened next defied everything we thought we knew about the animal kingdom. This is the extraordinary true story of Juma and Mvuvi, a tale of unlikely friendship that will make you question the boundaries between humans and wild animals. The MAASAI Mara National Reserve in Kenya, a place where life and death play out daily on golden plains stretching to the horizon, where over 2 million wildebeest thunder across rivers in their endless migration, where lions, the undisputed kings of the savannah, rule with power and grace. And it's here, among this wild splendor, that Juma has walked for 15 years as a park ranger. His boots have carved invisible paths through these plains, his hands have freed trapped birds and healed injured zebras. But Juma never imagined that saving one life would forever change his own, or that his greatest protector would emerge from his greatest fear. Every morning before dawn, Juma patrols the eastern sector of the reserve. He knows every tree, every watering hole. He can read the land like others read books, a disturbed patch of grass, unusual bird song. These are nature's warnings. Juma lives alone, miles from the nearest village. His neighbors are elephants and hyenas. His alarm clock is the morning chorus of 1,000 birds. But on this particular morning, the birds were silent. Something was wrong in Juma's beloved savannah, something that would test his courage like never before. It was just after the seasonal rains. The earth still smelled of moisture, the grass vibrant green against the red soil. That's when Juma heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold. A guttural growl, unmistakably lion, but laced with something else. Pain. Every instinct told him to turn back. Lions kill hundreds of people across Africa every year. But something in that cry spoke to Juma's heart. What he found wasn't just a wounded predator. It was a moment of decision that would forge an impossible bond. The lion was young but fully grown, its powerful body twisted against the cruel bite of a poacher's wire snare that had cut deep into its front leg. In those golden eyes, Juma saw a fierce will to live, but he also saw something else, a slow weakening. Without help, this magnificent creature would die a slow, agonizing death. Juma knew protocol: call for backup, wait for a tranquilizer team, but that could take hours. Hours this lion didn't have. What he did next would either cost him his life or become the stuff of legend. All Juma had was a length of rope, a knife, and his steady voice. No tranquilizer, no backup, just human compassion facing raw nature. He had seen other rangers killed by wounded animals. Even the gentlest creatures become unpredictable when in pain. And this was no gentle creature. It was the apex predator of the African plains. "Ndugu," he whispered. "Brother." The ancient Swahili word passed his lips like a prayer. In that moment, two species that had evolved as enemies locked eyes in a silent negotiation that defied natural law. The lion growled, baring teeth that could crush bone, but it didn't lunge. Perhaps it sensed Juma's intentions. Perhaps it was simply too weak. With one swift motion that required perfect timing, Juma cut through the snare. The lion jumped back, free but wounded, snarling with renewed energy. Juma fell backward, certain these would be his final moments. But death didn't come. Instead, something passed between them, a moment of understanding that transcended species. Then, as quickly as the encounter began, the lion disappeared into the brush. Juma reported the incident, enduring scoldings from his superiors about protocol and safety. But in his heart, he knew he had done the only thing he could. Days turned into weeks. Juma often scanned the horizon, wondering about the lion's fate. Had it survived? Had the wound healed? Or had his intervention merely postponed the inevitable? He would have his answer soon enough, but it would come in a form so unexpected, so impossible, that it would challenge everything we thought we knew about wild animals. It was a morning like any other. Juma stepped outside, stretching in the dawn light. Then he froze. There, on his doorstep, lay a fish. Not a river fish from the nearby stream, but a fat tilapia from the distant lake. Fresh. Still damp. Who would leave such a gift? Juma lived miles from any village. The nearest fishermen were half-day's walk away. Puzzled but practical, Juma cooked the fish that night. Little did he know, this unusual breakfast was just the beginning of something extraordinary. The next day, 2 fish, then 3. By the 5th morning, Juma was completely baffled. Determined to solve this mystery, Juma rose before dawn and waited, hidden, watching his doorstep in the growing light. As the first rays of sun touched the savannah, Juma saw a shape moving toward his hut, a shape that made his heart race. It wasn't human, it was golden, it was massive, and in its mouth was another fish. It was the lion, the same lion whose life Juma had saved. The limp was barely noticeable now, but the scar remained, a permanent reminder of their first encounter. The lion froze when it spotted Juma. 2 apex predators, one human, one feline, regarding each other across the threshold between wild and tame. Juma didn't move, didn't breathe. Then the lion did something astonishing. It sat. Just sat there like a house cat waiting for acknowledgement, its eyes never leaving Juma's face. Moving with deliberate slowness, Juma stepped into the open. The lion watched, alert but calm. "You've been fishing for me?" Juma asked, hardly believing the words coming from his own mouth. In the language of cats, a slow blink is a sign of trust. Whether this wild lion knew that didn't matter. The message was clear. There was no threat here, only an offering. As the lion disappeared once more into the bush, Juma was left with a question that would haunt scientists and wildlife experts for years to come. How could a wild predator not only remember a human's kindness, but choose to reciprocate it? At first, no one believed him. A lion bringing fish? Impossible. Lions don't fish, they don't bring gifts, and they certainly don't form relationships with humans. But the evidence kept appearing on Juma's doorstep. Soon, other rangers came to witness the phenomenon themselves. One ranger called the lion Mvuvi, Swahili for fisherman. The name stuck. Word spread beyond the reserve. Marine biologists were baffled. How had a lion learned to fish? Wildlife behaviorists were stunned. Why would it share its catch? Something unprecedented was happening in the MAASAI Mara. Over time, a rhythm developed. Every few days, Mvuvi would return with a gift. Fish were most common, but sometimes he brought honeycomb, once even a live tortoise, which Juma promptly released. Their interactions never became what we might call tame. Juma never touched Mvuvi, never tried to pet him or treat him like a domestic animal. He respected the wildness that defined this magnificent creature. Yet something profound had formed between them, a connection that transcended the natural order, a friendship built on mutual respect rather than dominance. But the wilderness is unforgiving, and even the most beautiful relationships must face its harsh realities. 3 years into their unusual friendship, disaster struck. The worst drought in decades gripped the MAASAI Mara. Rivers ran dry, grass withered, the great herds moved on, seeking water elsewhere. With game scarce, predators grew desperate. Juma worried about Mvuvi. Had he followed the herds? Was he strong enough to compete with younger lions? For weeks, no fish appeared, no sign of the golden guardian. Then, on the hottest day of the drought, Juma heard an unmistakable sound outside his hut. Not the soft pad of lion paws, but something far more alarming. Poachers, 3 of them. The drought had made desperate men even more desperate. With animals concentrated around remaining water sources, it was easy pickings for those willing to kill for ivory and horn. They wanted Juma's radio, his weapons. They wanted him silenced. One raised a machete. That's when they heard it. A low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. From the shadows emerged not 1 lion, but 5. Mvuvi in the lead, flanked by 4 lionesses, their eyes gleaming with deadly purpose in the moonlight. The poachers ran, their courage evaporating in the face of nature's perfect predators. Juma stood frozen, caught between his human attackers and the lions. The lionesses remained at the perimeter, but Mvuvi walked directly to Juma. For a moment, man and beast stood mere feet apart, closer than they had ever been before. Then Mvuvi dropped something on the ground. Not a fish this time. It was the poacher's knife. Mvuvi hadn't just scared them away. He had brought back evidence of their crime, as if to say, "I protect what's mine." Years passed, the drought broke, rains returned. Mvuvi grew into his full majesty, a black-maned lion in his prime, ruler of a territory that happened to include one human's humble hut. Juma too aged, his steps a little slower, his eyes a little dimmer. Their meetings became less frequent, but no less special. Mvuvi had a pride now, 4 lionesses and cubs that came and went with the rhythm of lion life. Sometimes Juma would glimpse them at a distance, always respectfully far from his home. But after one particularly long dry season, the fish stopped coming. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, and Juma began to fear what every friend eventually must face. Lions live 15 years in the wild if they're lucky. Juma knew this, yet he found himself searching the horizon each morning, hoping for a glimpse of gold among the green. Then, one evening, as the sky burned orange with sunset, a visitor arrived. Not Mvuvi, but a young lioness, one Juma recognized from Mvuvi's pride. Behind her, 3 cubs tumbled playfully in the grass. She watched him for a long time, with eyes so like her leader's. Then, with deliberate steps, she turned and began walking away, stopping to look back at Juma, a clear invitation to follow. Against all ranger protocols and basic survival instincts, Juma followed. The lioness led him to a grove of acacia trees near the river, Mvuvi's favorite fishing spot. There, in the dappled shade, lay Mvuvi, his magnificent body still, his great heart silent. The old lion had passed on. Cubs played nearby, oblivious to death's presence. The lioness gently nuzzled her fallen king one last time. Then she stepped back, allowing Juma to approach. In the wild, no human would dare come so close to lion cubs. But this was no ordinary pride. "Asante, Rafiki yangu," Juma whispered. "Thank you, my friend." Juma reported what had happened. Scientists came to examine Mvuvi's body. The cause was simple: old age. The lion had lived a full life by wild standards. But the questions Mvuvi left behind were anything but simple. How had a wild lion learned to fish? Why had it chosen to share its catch? What had it seen in the human who saved it? Science had no answers, but Juma didn't need them. He already understood what his heart had always known, that compassion creates connections that defy explanation. A year passed. Juma continued his patrols, though talk of retirement had begun. The story of the Fisherman Lion had spread far beyond Kenya, becoming something between legend and scientific curiosity. Then one morning, Juma found something on his doorstep that made his old heart leap. A fish, small but unmistakable. At the edge of the clearing stood one of Mvuvi's cubs, now almost grown, its mane just beginning to darken. It watched Juma with familiar golden eyes. Before Juma could process what was happening, the young lion turned and vanished into the brush. Some said it was coincidence, others instinct. But Juma knew better. In the heart of the lion, memory runs as deep as the ancient rivers of Africa. In the vast savannah of the MAASAI Mara, beneath endless skies where stars have witnessed the march of millennia, 2 species that evolved as adversaries found something rare and precious. Not just survival, not just tolerance, but friendship. And that, as Juma knows, is the wild's most sacred kind of magic.